Hello, Judy.
Hello, sir.
Hi. Morning. Well, now afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start shortly. Just give it a few more minutes for more people to join.
Yeah, no, perfect time. Let me grab my hot drink.
All right, sir.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second session for today of this Thrive conference, the Transformational HR Program 2020. It's been a great time here for the past 9 days. Today is the final day. We are pumped, we're excited. I'm glad to have Kamal Aderbigbe back to close this conference today. We'll be looking at organizational design for growth. I'll be bringing him up shortly. He's on standby. Please note that this session has been pre-approved for 3 global credits towards the GPHR certification from HRCI. But first, let me feel your pulse. How are you doing today? It's a great day here, sunny Sunday. Where are you joining us from? And how has it been so far? Many of you were in the first session this morning, winning with emotional intelligence, taken by JAM. Let me know how you doing. And how has it been? Let me see, who do we have here? Adewumi, thank you for joining. Folabi, Bolanle, Iberi, thank you guys for joining again. Isiamaka, you're welcome. Felicia, Judith, you're welcome again. Thank you for joining. Juliet, Obaseki, Samuel, Omotayo. No, sorry, Omotola. Thank you for joining. Utak, Onyade, Rebecca. Great to have you all here again. Great. Omotola says great, amazing. Utak says great. Thank you so much for your feedback. Trust you're having a great day and having a restful weekend as well. So quickly, Let's meet our speaker for today, a man that needs no introduction, but we'll still do it anyways. How many of you were in this first session and the first weekend of this conference? That's August 2nd. Amotala, you were here. It was great. It was fantastic. Yes, succession planning, leveraging succession planning to emerge stronger. That was a great one. And I'm sure is going to blow our minds again today. And looking forward to that. Adewumi says, good afternoon, Babajide. It's been power-packed back-to-back sessions. Thank you for that feedback. Utak says, thank you for your thoughtfulness. Thank you for joining as well. Thank you for investing your time, your data. You could have been doing any other thing during this period, but you've all made this worthwhile by being a great audience and participating in all the sessions. So we appreciate that. Thank you so much. So quickly, let's meet our speaker for today. Kamar Aderibigbe. Kamar recently joined BNP Paribas as Associate Vice President, Human Resources. In his role, he leads the provision of strategic HR business partnering to several divisions within the Montreal office of the bank. Prior to BNPP, Kamal gained extensive experience and expertise in leadership development, talent management, effectiveness, succession planning, organizational effectiveness, and mentoring high potential managers with British American Tobacco. While at BAT, he worked across 3 locations, starting in Lagos, Nigeria, before moving to London, England, and finally Montreal, Canada. At the BAT headquarters in England, he was the first Black African to hold the role of regional head of talent management for Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa, a region supporting 13,000 employees. Prior to joining BAT, Kamal began his career working in the consulting firm of KPMG Professional Services before moving on to Accenture. Kamal holds a bachelor's degree from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and a master's of arts with distinction from Fielding Graduate University, Santa Barbara, California. He is a certified executive coach with the International Coach Federation and a certified change manager with Prosky. He has lectured several cohorts of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management in Nigeria and was a volunteer faculty with Faith Foundation, a not-for-profit supporting entrepreneurs in Nigeria. Joining us today from Montreal, Canada, let's give a warm tHRive welcome to Kamar with a virtual applause and standing ovation. Let's make him feel welcome. Great to have you here again, sir.
Thank you, Jide. Thank you. In fact, by the end of the description, my head is already swelling. Was it me that describing? No, thank you very much. Thank you. I do feel very honored to be back, and think it's definitely a special privilege to have someone visit you the first time, and then you ask the person to come visit you again. So either the person didn't eat too much food the last time he came around, or he made sure that he wiped his feet on the carpet when he was leaving your house. So no, great to be back. Great to come back and be with you all. And thank you to everyone. I agree with what Jide was saying. Thank you to all who joined. Thank you. I see some names from the last time. Yes, I see some names, and to the ones who are new to us to this session, thank you for joining. I think you can all agree that August has, for you with this program, has been an amazing month. If you've been collecting 3 hours, even if you've only attended one session, every weekend for 4 weekends, you've collected 12 hours of credits. If you've attended more than that, you've doubled your hours, and just really, really excellent work done by Adulam and Jide with building this out. Okay, so let's do this. Let's close on a high. Let's talk about organizational design. I always, when I say one topic is my favorite topic, it seems like all topics are my favorite topics. No, no, no. It's just that I'm passionate about whatever I start to talk about, whenever I start doing it. So I really go in and try to understand it so that I want to really give my best to the subject. So it ends up becoming or sounding like my favorite subject. I don't consider myself a reward specialist. I don't even like to play in their space. But then I did a session, a couple of this actually last night on reward management with some colleagues out here who are writing the Canadian certification exam, and I finished sounding like a guru. And I can tell you that, trust me, when Bumi and I sit together, Bumi Mabo is she will tell me all some of the things I said is still baby knowledge. But the point is, whatever you do, however you seek knowledge, learn enough to apply yourself and learn enough to be able to speak comfortably about it. It's important as HR professionals that we don't think of one aspect of HR as not our own, but oh well, it's some people's own. Well, no, then understand all of it, but then have your specialty. And my specialty is talent management. Inclusive in that is this what we're going to talk about today. I actually went and did a master's in this subject that we're talking about today, at least one aspect of it. Okay, so in its totality, OD is a field of specialization, period. And it can get very fluffy. I completely agree. I've had that argument with a lot of people. And OD, when you say the word, when you use the phrase or the acronym OD, is confusing to people. Is it organizational design? Okay, fine, I get it. Reporting relationship boxes and lines. Okay, fine. Then you see organizational development. It even gets more confusing because then it's a total subject area that includes design and everything else that you might even wonder that, oh, is that part of OD? Yeah, it is. Culture, employee engagement, organizational change, diversity. All of that are subset topics under OD, organizational development, okay, leadership. So then you kind of see that OD itself just gets way too broad and way too deep. And then you need to sort of step back and go, where is my interest area? So I like to stand myself as a student of OD, organizational development. I'm still learning. I really want to know and do a lot more within that field because I see it as an opportunity that it's an area of intense change and you can get a lot of mileage coming out of it. So one aspect of OD that we're going to talk about today, let me bring up my slide. And this, let's do that, share. Okay. Let's see. So my screen, can you all see my screen? Please. And Jide, as usual, I'm going to rely on you for the active feedback. And so please, because right now I don't see anybody anymore on the screen. So let me try to move. Yeah. Let me try to move the chat box. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So interestingly, for some, I promise this one, I'll try to take only 1 second. Half for, no, well, not 1 second, 1 minute. When some people, we had some people joined the last time, and now the new people who joined, I think it's important that we all, with the help of GD, get the content and even get all the contents from this, some of the sessions. I tried to join some, but unfortunately it's always either too early for me on this side. And GD knows that this session, I told him I preferred it. He wanted to give me the later session, but I said I prefer this one. It's very early here. It's still 7 o'clock on my side and my family is still sleeping. And I have my trusted, cup of hot drink. You see me sipping from time to time. So, but I enjoyed this one because it's like first thing in the morning, and I'm done with it. It's noon for you, but it's first thing for me, and I really like early morning session. So, we want to talk about organizational design, particularly when you're growing. And I know I titled it, for growth, but really, organizational design happens even when you're not growing. And I'll pause at different moments, maybe 15 minutes after start speaking, and I'll pause and you take questions. We can then continue again because really the focus of this type of session, the one I'm doing today, rather less slides, a lot of conversation, and a lot of notes that I've, working through the material that I prepared that I'm going to be referring to on my side here. So the recording and your participation will really make this very rich conversation. For the visual people, I have only some slides to visually represent it, and I totally apologize ahead of time, but I have some content that I can show you to really picture when you need to see the picture of what I'm trying to talk about. I'll show you what that looks like on slides. Okay, let's go to my next slide. Okay, so first thing we want to talk about, or total learning objectives that I want to cover with you guys is, what are some models of organizational design? What do you want to consider, in the organizational design? And then how can you implement the actions? And what do you want to do to even measure effectiveness, right? Okay, what is organizational design? The first thing is like this mythical beast, and what is organizational design? And if I were to ask you all, what is organizational design to you? What would you say? What would you say? Just give me your thoughts on what is organizational design to you. I'm gonna give it a minute or so. Did please help me with some responses when they start coming in?
Omotola says, how we put up a structure the organization will follow, how we departmentalize.
Parts of it's correct. Yeah.
Obaseki says, aligning different components to achieve strategic corporate goals.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. Because you definitely must have strategy as a component when you're thinking about design. It's a critical component of, in fact, it's the whole reason to ensure they are organized.
Okay, another one from Motola. How we set the strategic objectives of the organization.
Okay, how we set it. Okay, interesting. Okay, interesting.
And Utak says it is a way an organization is structured to achieve its goal.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. See, what's common to all the descriptions is the word structure. And I think it's yeah, you're right. It is the structure. And you could be forgiven for assuming that the only thing when you talk about organizational design is structure, right? But that's so limiting. It's not the only thing in organizational design that you need to build and consider when you're designing the organization, because structure is the visible outcome, but everything else, there's so much more to OD. You can't, if you think of structure only, yeah, you're only using one of the 5 elements that is critical to organizational design. And I say critical, yeah, critical to organizational design. Structure is just the outcome. That's what people see. That's what they experience. And remember, structure is nothing but boxes and lines that people don't even see. It's inherently on paper. It's not like, you leave and walk around knowing that I report to this person and therefore you're joined to that person by that line. No, it doesn't occur that way. But it is the paper representation of the outcome of the organizational design. And there's so much more than that. And we'll look at that. So that's my definition. And I'll be referencing a lot from a book called Organizational Design for Leaders by Jay Galbraith. And now I'll send that name to Jide and you guys can research that. It's the definitive compendium of a document that I've found the most useful. There's been some revisions to it. Very, very useful. It was my lifesaver during my master's, because my master's program was in organizational development. And then I did a lot of work in organizational design. So there's 5 things that you need to think about when you're doing organizational design. The strategy is the first thing. So you configure the structures, process. But we all talk about structures, but then that's not the only thing you design when you're doing organizational design. You do processes, you design reward system, you design your people practices, you design your policies to make sure you build an effective organization that's capable of delivering business strategy. One of the things I wrote at the beginning when I sent my blurb to Jide, when he was asking me for the intro to this session, I wrote that you can have the vision, you can have the people, and you just say, let me just throw them together, they'll figure it out, it'll make things work. No, it's not gonna happen. You know that. You all live that. Bright people, great ideas don't make the organization. No, they don't even deliver the right results. They may be smart, but if they're not organized to effectively deliver it, and you do it only just by saying, yeah, you report to that person, you report to that person, no, that's not enough. You do that, then build on top of it. How do I motivate them? How do I reward them? All of that must be consciously built into that design. Okay, so the 5 things that we'll talk about today, we'll start with the strategy, like you've all mentioned. The structure, yes, it's a critical component of it, but it's not, my point is not the only one. Then the processes, what are some of the common processes? How do you reward that? The fourth one, sorry, is the reward. How do you reward? What kind of values do you have inside the organization? And then the final one is, how do you design people practices to ensure that the new organization is successful? Okay. So if I think about the things that we started to look at, if you look at this sort of model and you think of what you consider to be the hard side of design, these are the strategic elements. You want to have a vision and a mission. What are your values? What are the organizational objectives? Where do you think you're going to? What strategy do you have? What are your priorities as a company? What programs are you doing? How do you allocate resources? And what kind of metrics and goals are you setting for this organization? So imagine these are the strategic elements that you want to have very clearly set out. And then on the human side or the people side, you want to consider things like leadership. How do you engage? These are the things you want to drive when you're engaging. So what's leadership looking like? Team effectiveness, commitment, and motivation. Even how you communicate, how do you involve people? If you combine the two together, how they interact in designing your organization, how they interact in designing your organization features as it comes out in the structure, the roles and responsibilities you have, right? The competencies for the organization, what are the management processes you have, what governance do you come up with, incentives and culture. And then really just again stepping back, organizational design is more than structures. Okay. So an organizational structure is a representation of the relationships in the organization, right? When you talk to your leaders and they ask you for, oh well, change the department, right? And yeah, and I'll come to that in a bit. When we talk about when should you redesign, it's the first thing that we tend to think of, that what are my moments, what are the critical moments when this happens, what even triggers a conversation about design. If my company is a small SME, we have just 10 people, yeah, we know who reports, the CEO manages everybody, we're all reporting. That's fine. Why should I even bother about design? But that's the thing, we're talking about growth. Okay, we're talking about growth. And we're designing for growth. That's the whole goal of our work. We're designing for growth. Now, I've lived this life again, in as much as I was a student of it, on my job for the last 7 years. Before I left my last company, I was constantly always doing something about this, consistently. And it turns out that even before I even started doing that, there were things happening that I was involved with. And every year we're having conversations around it. Because even if you have, as soon as you have your strategic objectives, so let's look at that. When's the first time, when are you thinking of, when should you start thinking about redesigning your organization? When you have a new company, when you're starting a new company, yeah, you must think about, how am I going to be set up? What am I going to be doing? And how will I build tools and processes in place to ensure that as I continue to add more to it, it will work. So let me give an example, particularly when it comes to a new company or new division. Say you've been growing. Yeah, this one is one example that I lived before I left. So we always had tobacco products manufactured as, our standard sort of product for more than 100 years. And we knew how to sell tobacco products. It was fine. Everybody knew it was very successful at selling tobacco products. That's why we're all around. But we wanted to introduce, at least in the team I worked with in Canada, what was considered to a less smoke alternative. It was called tobacco heated products. And we needed to sell it into the market. So we had to imagine what would that look like? How do we have the people in the company to even run this thing? Because it's a completely new organization. We knew we needed to sell a new product, and you had to be sort of properly set up to deliver on that product. And it didn't just say sort of pick up one person, that now you report it up. No, 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 no. It was a quick step back to say, first of all, starting with the consumer and the customer in mind. What does that product look like? How do we achieve, concept, ideation to consumer? What does that look like? That was the trigger for redesign. One other trigger for redesign is whenever you're planning for growth. As soon as you know that, oh wow, and then my favorite axis of success or axis of wealth back in the day, in Nigeria at least, was LAP. LAP means Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, which was you have businesses in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, you're made for life, okay? Because all of them have different sources of wealthy people that are willing to spend money. At least this was the myopic understanding. Forgive me if I'm wrong now. So imagine you're doing the LAP axis. You're saying, I want to do LAP. I'm in L right now. I want to do A and P because I have my business started out in Lagos. It is doing really well. Once you start to think about who's going to man my Abuja office, who's going to be in Port Harcourt, then that's a trigger for redesign. It's a trigger for redesign. Yeah, again, new leader, new role, new leader. This one is like classic. You know how out with the old, in with the new. Part of my idea as I'm coming in as a new boss is I've always wanted to change such and such and such. I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do that. So my first action, as soon as I'm landing in, wipe the slate clean. Good and bad, right? Good and bad. But that's one of the bases as well, one of the triggers for redesign. And changes in external, the other one is about changes in external environment, the regulation, the policy, the economy. Do you know how many people, in the context of when COVID happened this year, a lot of organizations had to pivot differently. All the luxury brands, LVMH, all of them that produced perfume, the only way they could stay relevant once they identified the opportunity was to start making hand sanitizers. Suddenly they were in the business of making hand sanitizers. That was a change. And they needed to redesign the organization to repurpose people to be able to produce hand sanitizers. That was their change. Okay. The other piece was people that wanted to all the car making, the luxury car companies, they started making ventilators because they recognized that at the end of the day, health care had needs and the consumers are in the healthcare sector. So they just changed. And because of that, that's another trigger for you to know that you're going to redesign your organization. And the final one, no surprises there. When you fail or when the organization has failed to deliver on the expected performance levels, when they've not met the goals and objectives, it's a huge trigger for redesign. That's when you start talking about cost cutting. And it's not just cost cutting with the mind that, okay, well, just close down that department, close down that branch. What does that mean for the rest of the organization? Because imagine if you've had 3 branches, okay, and now you had 3 directors, 3 managers, 3 heads of functions, 3 of everything. The minute you're closing one down and you're merging from 3 to 2, it's okay. So what will this now look like? And you can't stop and say, well, all I need to do is again, focus on structure. No. Step back, go back to design principles and say, now that I'm recognizing that I did not meet my strategic objective with that approach, what does that look like now? What am I going to do differently? What am I going to do differently? And how will I pivot differently to say organizational actions that led me down that road? What changes am I making? What adjustments am I making to my strategy to ensure that I now set myself up properly for success in the next time around? Another thing, when you think about when should you resign, the other thing to remember and also that I want to talk about is in order to achieve swift execution in your redesign efforts, you must build what Galbraith and his researchers describe as a reconfigurable organization, an organization that is easily adaptable. And the questions I want to ask you as you think about your organization is, do you have active leadership? You know, what do I mean by that? Are your leaders consciously recognizing the role design plays in delivering the business objectives? Are they part and parcel of, asking and thinking ahead and not waiting on that? Do you have active leaders who recognize that organizational design has to be a core competence, not just of the HR manager, but of all members of the leadership team, including the CEO? Do you have active leadership? Do you um, have knowledge management? Do you encourage knowledge management? And how do you do that? And why is that important? You see, you take advantage of knowledge management to adapt your organization. You take advantage of all of that to build the kind of company you want, and you take advantage of the knowledge of your market, competition, knowledge of your processes, knowledge of your content, understanding that there's a shift in it, and therefore I need to redesign. Is your organization that flexible? And how do you encourage people who learn? What do you do to learners? How do you reward them? Because what we tend to have in organizations is we don't focus on people who bring in corporate knowledge. We don't actively seek that, or we even encourage that. We just, expect them to deliver what they do. But then there has to be a component where someone is bringing intelligence from outside and you're rewarding that component, not just paying for it, but recognizing the role of that person in doing work to bring in intelligence into the company. And there's also flexibility. Yeah, you want to be an adaptable organization that quickly responds to change. You must be flexible. And how do you build flexibility? It means you tend to identify some redundancies in your organization, some parts of the organization that either is easily turned around, either because you recognize that, well, if you have salespeople who were selling one product before, and again, we did this back at my former company where we said we needed people to be, they were single category salesmen because they've only sold one type of product, tobacco, leaf manufactured tobacco. And now we needed them to be multi-category salespeople, meaning that they were selling into different categories. What that meant was different competencies. And the people who quickly didn't adapt to that, they were the ones that, they couldn't survive and they didn't perform. But once you recognize that, it is your role to say that I'm going to have uh, opportunities to switch people around or create the mindset that this organization will be flexible because we need to pivot quickly. COVID even told us that. Yeah, I just give you examples of people who switched from selling perfume bottles that nobody needed anymore to now selling hand sanitizers that everybody needed. Yeah. And then how do you integrate individuals in the organization? When you think about generalists and specialists, you almost think them as people who, a generalist is like somebody who does everything and doesn't have any focus. He just does everything. Yeah, but there's value in being that adaptable, right? And so what role does that play in designing career paths for you? I'm talking about things that are now jumping. It feels like I'm jumping out of organizational design, but no, that's the mindset you need to have. And those are attributes you need to have in your company that enables you to recognize that we are, I use the common phrase that's thrown around these days, agile. We're an agile organization. Okay. Agility means that you're able to easily respond to changes in the environment. And one of the features around that includes your ability to integrate roles like specialism and generalism. How do you do that? A generalist is somebody who you consider to be able to fit into different roles, right? And specialists, while their area of specialism remains their core competence, they can still apply that specialism to different parts of the organization. Okay, so they're not just like specialists for their own division alone, but they continue to do what they're doing, but they're just doing it for multiple parts of the organization. And that's what you're able to sell to them. And that's part of your mindset and the kind of traits your company needs to have if you're in one organization that you consider yourself to be agile or you're easily reconfigurable. And then the other thing is that, you must have employee commitment, because there's what we call change fatigue or redesign fatigue, because it feels like, oh, every time you design again, every time downsizing. Yeah, but once the employee recognizes that this is a company that will not wait for things to happen, and then the culture is one where we recognize that, look, we're seeing ahead, we're always thinking ahead, and we're always asking ourselves the next question. When you understand that as an organization and it's part of your DNA, employees are committed to doing that with you, but they must then recognize that that's what the commitment is. So then finally, change readiness. You must have a constant mindset that change is constant. Really, it's never going to stop. Change will continue to happen, and how do you flexibly respond to change? Just pausing very briefly for any questions, Jide, that may have come through while I've been talking.
Okay, I think the only question here is about the book you mentioned. So
Oh
someone
yeah,
is
yeah.
looking for the title.
Okay, I'll send that through. Don't please, don't let's don't shouldn't worry about that. I promise I'll send that through.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the dangers of misalignment or just not having an aligned organization? If your strategy is not clear, there's no common direction, there's no criteria for delivering your strategy for decision making, there's confusion. There's serious confusion for your organization when it's not aligned. Serious confusion. If your structure, the organizational structure you've identified, does not align to the strategy that you've built, there's you don't have the ability to quickly mobilize because people don't know, and there's ineffective execution. Anyway, the opportunities you miss out on great opportunities to win businesses, to grow, and to drive change. If your processes, are not aligned, you don't collaborate, you find that there's long decision making and there's difficulty to share information. So, and then if your reward system, is again improperly set up, and you just leave it to chance, there's going to be things that the biggest thing you generate is wrong results, low standards, frustration, and then of course increased turnover. The people practices, if you don't have the right ones, where you just build, there's efforts that result, there's low satisfaction and there's low performance. Okay. Now I recognize this one. I've showed you I've talked about the 5 different strategy points, the 5 points around organizational design. This is what happens when you don't do the right thing around it. So let's now sort of focus on the framework itself. And I say this is probably where we'll spend the bulk of our time today on this slide. Yeah, just this one slide. We'll come back and forth on the other pieces. But this is where I really want to spend a lot of time talking, and we'll spend a lot of time describing the examples, and we can spend time on each section, just asking the questions that you have. Okay, starting with strategy. And as we say strategy, the first thing is, okay, yeah, we understand strategy. Yeah, but strategy in the context of design. Because strategy is fine. What are the implications for design? Right? What is your strategy for your company? The first company can say, well, I want to be top in customer excellence. But what does that mean? Okay, because when you are starting the process of organizational design, your business strategy is the first point. Remember when we shifted from we had a pyramid, and the pyramid said we wanted to be the number 1 company in the world. And the new CEO came. Remember what we said, triggers for the redesign. The new CEO came and he switched that and said, no, I don't want to be the number 1 company in the world if I'm not meeting consumer needs. I want to put the consumer at the heart of what we do. And he said it was symbolic because the pyramid, shows somebody going up, but I want to put the consumer at the heart of what we do. So our organizational strategy changed from a pyramid to a circle with, winning consumer moments at the heart, at the center of the circle. And what that meant was, okay, so the first question you had to ask yourself was, you're a company that said you wanted to be number 1 company in the world. Now you say you want to be winning the heart of the consumer. So are you set up for that? What does that mean for your organization? What kind of consumer value chain have you built? if you were going from being number one, because when you were thinking about yourself as being the number one organization in the world, you had to be number one in production, number one in sales, number one in this. You're focused on being number one, and maybe along the way, the consumer was left out, because the consumer is what makes you number one. Now, when you switch to becoming the consumer at the heart of what you do, you're going to have some different questions that you ask yourself, because that's what happens in design. Once you set your strategy, then you ask the question that, do I have the right organization to achieve this business strategy? Okay, I want to go into production. I want to go into manufacturing. I want to go into sales. Do I have the right kind of, because it's not just saying I want to do this, but there's a mission behind what you want to do. And the sentence of the mission statement describes the intention that you're going to achieve and has design implications. Because that's the first thing you set out. Once you set that out, you consider yourself, this is where I want to get to. And then what's the design implications for that? And some, design implications that you come up with is the criteria that you have in setting up your organization, because you have to assess my current state and my destination state. So when we started to look at that, it was how do we currently engage consumers? What are the moments when consumers enjoy or use our products? Because remember, we're focused only on being number one. And what are the departments or the functions in our organization that currently have direct interface with customers or consumers? And what have been the measures? How have they been successful? What are the questions that we should be asking them now to ensure that from A to B, organizational strategy to the execution, are we set up to meet the objectives that we've set for them? So I'll give you another example on product. When it comes to a new product category, so you start by saying how many possible users of your product. When you say you want to launch a new product, you start with what are the key processes for my new product? How do I develop new products? What's my innovation pipeline? What kind of market research am I doing? And then you say, okay, fine. If I want to be product centered, I want to be product centered as a company. So what's the culture? How do I reward innovation? What's the culture around me? And then how do I even measure that? Because you go from this is who I want to be, and then you go across the line of the implications for that. And the questions you ask yourself on the implications are, do I have the right processes? What's my current culture? How do I measure this new direction that I'm going to be setting for myself? And then what kind of people do I have? Do I have the right product, right people? If your focus is on business operations, say, okay, I want to be able to deliver, efficient products all the time. How do you create value for that? Because some of the things that you focus on, if your mission is to be efficient in product, that means you're talking about packaging, the cost of delivery. So think peak milk and Three Crowns, or think cowbell and peak milk, the battle of cowbell and peak milk. Because this was something that was talked about. Two milk companies, one with a strategy around high value products. The other one came in. I said, you know what? I cannot compete with you at that luxury end, but I'm going to meet more consumers at their point of need. I'm going to go into fragmentation. I will decentralize my products, break it really down into that. So because then the operation strategy in the mind of the milk production people was to say, deliver best value to customers at the least cost possible. So everything that meant it was going to be expensive, branding, design, all of that, we'll strip that out. Okay, so how do we create a solution for consumers that is really focused on just giving them exactly what they want with the minimum of frills, but still giving them quality? And that we were able to deliver on cost for them. So you remove packaging costs, you removed the inconvenience of getting it. And then you just also remember that with the single unit sessions that sachets that the milk company produced, they were able to get single use out of the way. People just delivered on single use and that was it. Okay. And then next thing they talk about when you're thinking about operations. So you go from your key processes. So now that you've defined that you want to be a least cost product owner, or operations must be least cost, do your processes currently achieve that? Are you able to convert from quickly getting it? So you must have, and this is when you think of lean manufacturing, you must have the minimum possible steps to getting the product to the consumer. And then again, you think about your culture. Are you standardized? Do people understand that I don't need to innovate yet? I just want to get it done the fastest possible way. So you must think about standardization for that. Then what's the cost per transaction? What are the measures? So that's the kind of measure you have. What's your measure for each one? What's the cost per transaction? How do you achieve quality and consistency? And what's the effectiveness on utilization? And then you go from saying that the people you have, how are your people managing the scale and the volume of work that they're doing? Okay, do you have the right people to manage the scale and volume of work they're doing? Are they able to deliver on that? And then finally, with the strategic design, you need to say that for my organization, once I'm clear on where it's going to, I need to know that the customer that I've set up as one of my value sets, as a customer, creating value to customer need. Think about relationship management. Those are the processes you need to have if you're focusing on customers. What is your CRM solution? What is your technology solution? How do you create value for consumers? And then what kind of culture does your company have around customer excellence? Do you see customer as the first person, as the first and the best individual? What's the share of the most valuable customer? How do you build customer satisfaction as well? And then what are you doing to build long-term relationships for people? Okay. So then how do you measure that? You need to determine on your things like net promoter score, what is your customer satisfaction index, and how do you generate enough value for customers through your entire value chain? And then you ask yourself about the people. So I'm doing this for each category of business focus, because for every business choice you make, 4 things you must always ask yourself. What processes will help me achieve that goal? What's the culture in my organization that delivers on that? How do I measure the effectiveness? And do I have the right people to do that? Okay. Yeah. And then my last point on strategy is that, if your strategy focuses on products, make sure you get better products, highest quality. If your strategy focuses on operations, you want to get the least cost possible. If it's built on customers, make sure it's down to build the best relationships you can possible. Okay. So let's talk about structure, which is really the next bit around. Once you set your design and you've decided on a strategy and you have your design criteria, what am I going to look out for when I'm building organizational strategy? You want to decide on structure. And when you think about organizational structure, the 3 things that typically happen in organizational structure is, what power and authority are you setting up? What are the reporting relationships? What are the organizational roles for teams and individuals? And this is where we talk about different types of organizational structure. The first one that, like I said, I'll switch and I'll come back. The first type, that is the simplest one, is the functional organizational structure. And what is a functional organizational structure? This is the most basic form of a functional organizational structure. So you have functional managers and employees below them. So think of your functional managers as, head of finance, head of HR, head of R&D, or head of technology. So you have 4 distinct organizational functions in the company. And within these 4 functions, you're able to clearly say that there's specialization because you're clearly distinguishing that. And this typically happens for simple organizations, by the way. Okay. The lateral relationships between them is how employees can interact across, but they don't necessarily connect in that way by reporting to each other, but they can interact across that way. Okay. But the thing is, the distinct thing about this is, this functional focus. What are the advantages of something like this? It's very useful for small or simple organizations. When you build an organization that it's starting out, you don't have that many complexities, this is the easiest format that you can have. The other type of organizational structure that you can have sort of built around this as well is based on geographical spread. So you can have regions. And in each region, you can replicate this type of functional structure with a regional head. And banks typically use that because of the size of their businesses. And then you can just have multiple replications of that. What a lot of organizations have started to do and learn from is they recognize that, well, even though I have a geographical spread, I might need certain functions located at a different point, and therefore then they build this thing called a hybrid structure, where and I again use banks where they can have some functions they consider front office and back office, and that organizational type means that some roles or some teams are dedicated to meeting consumer needs from a front, and then the other ones are dedicated to meeting consumer needs in a different way. So typical departments that will be considered back office, not even it's things like risk or treasury. And there's treasury, front office treasury, back office treasury, treasury operations, and the bankers, people who are HR business partners for banks will probably even give me better examples of what that looks like. So the important thing about that is to recognize that you're looking at your business, your organizational structure from the focus of the kind of work that it does to deliver the business strategy. That's how you're organized. You have front office and back office. You've built the front office to focus on clients and work that is facing the bringing work in, and then the back office team is focused on ensuring standardization processes and really building up to support the front office team. Now, in itself, that generates some disadvantages because for some employees who work in the front or back office, it creates its own kind of culture where front office, because they're more client facing, are seen to be more valuable than the back office ones. And that creates its own dichotomy, which of course you can fix that through reward management and how you support these individuals. The other one that form of organizational structure that you can find is service related. You organize along your service lines. And the reason for that is when you build specialization, you want to be able to build experts in the different services that you deliver. Say, delivery, you want to customer engagement. You build specialism, and somebody actually owns that. There's a fifth type, which is around product. You organize around your product, and with each product, say, I know manufacturing companies typically have a lot of this with, say, like a conglomerate like Unilever, for example. You would have product teams where they would have specific owners of brand, sales, marketing, just focused on that product because they want to build strength and build capability around that product. And then they will then still leverage some things that they consider to be shared services. What most organizations are thinking of us and doing is there's no point replicating certain services that cuts across the entire organization. Okay. And then that brings me to one other type that we'll talk about in a bit, and we'll use it as part of this conversation, the matrix organization. Okay. Now, if you know, like, if you're like me, like most people, if you work as an HR manager right now, you're probably living in a matrix or working as a matrix manager. It's very, very likely. Because what is the matrix? It means you have more than one reporting relationship. This matrix I'm showing in this chart is really focused on, organized by projects. So there's a project manager that supervises across projects. So this is a project matrix, and the production groups, each of the groups, they have two, relationships, one to the project manager and one to the product manager. So there's that dual relationship that they both tend to organize. If you look at our roles, the HR business partners in divisions, they have one of the, most obvious matrices that we have in the HR team, because if you have the HR business partner for supply chain, the head of supply chain or supply chain division will want that HR business partner on their team reporting into them. And also the head of HR will need that HR business partner reporting into them. When I was in England, I had one of the craziest matrices that I had to live through as a talent manager. So my matrix was based on function and geography. because which is a combination of some of the two types I talked about earlier. I've talked about functional types and then geographical types. So, but you can have a combination of the two, and then it creates a very interesting matrix, because I was the talent manager for a geographical region, EMEA, but I also had a functional relationship with the global head of talent management. And so I was the one in the middle. So think of me like the production group person who reported to one, the talent manager, but then I also had responsibility to the head of HR for the regional, for the geographical region that I belong to. Advantages of Matrix is obvious because you're able to build that connection. The one thing that must happen in the Matrix is communication flow. The communication must flow. It must always, people must be kept in the know. Because as you can imagine, the disadvantage of matrix type is the conflicts, the conflicting priorities. And it happened all the time. And my matrix was even weird because my functional manager was a German and my geographical boss was a Russian. And you can imagine the two cultural types. So I had the German straight, efficiency all the time, and the Russian, cold, expressionless, And so there were moments when I was caught in the middle because I always had to deliver on what the talent agenda needed to be globally, but then sometimes was in conflict with what the regional agenda needed to be. So the regional head of HR was always pushing her own direction, and then the global talent manager was always going, EMEA, you guys better get in line. You guys better get in line because come on, and you need to sort your boss out. I'm always thinking, why don't you guys just talk? Why are you guys putting me in the middle? But that's the reality of matrix managers. And you all will face it. If I ask some of you now, I'll say, if you've lived those kind of experiences in matrix, your one priority is aligning conflicting priorities. Yeah, and it's so true. You always have to manage the two differences between both circles. And what tended to happen? How did I resolve it? What used to happen? I would get them in a room, copy both of them in the same email, ensure that we have strategic building sessions together. And we would take content from what the geography needs to influence the functional agenda. And we would cascade the functional agenda into the geography to ensure prompt and proper execution. Okay, so dial back and I'll pause for questions. We talked briefly about the functional type, when you're designing, geographical type, the product type, the service type, and now we talked about the matrix. And then the hybrid, which is either a front office, back office, or a mix of a geography functional one that creates this very, very strange matrix. Okay. So again, another moment of pause just to check the temperature before I just keep speaking like I'm on the radio. Let me know that let's get some questions.
Okay, there's a question here. I don't know if you want to take it now.
Yeah, sure.
Omotula is asking, the framework around organizational design is very holistic and involves key functions from top management to finance to manufacturing to sales being on the same page to design a strategy and processes across functions that align with this strategy. So what do you do if you have this level of maturity as HR, but other key stakeholders are not yet on the same page?
Well, I think the first place you start from is building organizational competencies around. Do you have the right person in those roles in the first place? If they don't believe you have the maturity, does your CEO have the maturity? Does he have the understanding? If the CEO does not, there's a big problem, of course. There's a very, very big problem, but you can still fix that by making sure that you, as the HR partner, what everybody listens to is data. And I talk about it even in my last session. HR does not make or add value if we're not bringing data to the table. You need to show the finance manager, along with his peers, why this change needs to happen through the use of data. Because remember what I shared before. If we go back on the misaligned organization, I know I kind of skipped through that a bit. If you think about it, this slide here, when there's misalignment and the finance manager does not believe that there's a need to organize. The size of the lost opportunity, the first one, the second one, will really point out that there's a need to stop and do things differently, because you're not going to move forward. You're not able to execute. If something comes up on the market, or even think about it, like in response to a particular regulation, there were companies that, although of course this example maybe not the best one, but it happened, right? That under their watch, MTN failed to implement a government directive. And they tried, and it's all political, and we ended up hearing about how the thing was managed from the back end. But guess what? Implementing that strategy or not, think about it as a smaller company that had to pay the fine. Those are the kinds of measures that you need to show. So your job as the HR manager with the maturity is, what are you not saying to that finance manager? How can you leverage data to show the missed opportunities or the fail or the results of the inaction? That's your first job. And then of course you need to get the CEO on your side. And how do you win the CEO? Again, through results. I talked to a CEO last night on a different topic, and he was telling me how he's the one challenging and thinking for his HR manager and asking her questions about retention. You don't want, and he's feeling you're not adding value to me if I'm the one asking you all these questions. I need you to be coming to me with these kinds of conversations and be telling me that we're not doing this, we're not doing this. That is a CEO that has people agenda in the top of their mind. Because every CEO understands that the right CEOs, they understand that without people, they're not going to get the results done. Have I answered your question, or is there something else that that you want me to focus, that maybe you need me to clarify, just to be sure?
Okay. I think you have, but let's hear from her. Okay, she says yes, you have.
Okay.
So quickly, another question from Omolola.
Okay.
She's asking, what would you recommend as the best structure? So I think she's referring to the organizational structure.
Oh, wow. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. The use, how and why you use them is linked to where you are as an organization. Okay, because if you're small, the organization is small. And what I mean by small is not just in terms of numbers, or it's inclusive of the numbers of people, but it starts with the size of the business. That's what I mean by small. Small starts with the size of the business. What's the size of revenue? What's the size of your market? What's your company size relative to the other players within that market? Okay, that's what tells you small or big or large, and then you can determine that for yourself. That influences the kind of organization you design or you implement. At the beginning or the first sort of phase of your organization, a functional structure is always fine, and this is always the best to start with. But you shouldn't stop there. That's the point of this. You don't stop with a functional organization structure, because it's simplistic and it misses the opportunity to drive certain collaboration, because it's so simple. You just easily use it to say, hey, this. So my message is, there's no one best one. The only thing is, make sure you're focused on the one that achieves your organizational goals. If you need to make it complicated, yeah, please do so. Just make sure that you have the right framework to do that. Because with functional organization, you can have great knowledge, you can build depth, but then it's difficult then to manage diverse products. So geography helps you give focus in that geography, but hey, it's then hard to mobilize and share the resources with other people. Because what you don't want, geographical structures, oh my goodness, oh man. Because everybody starts to do their own thing. They create their own mini kingdom in their geography. Because you've given them the authority, right, to build, specific structures. Then everybody starts adding their own thing. No. So that's why you need to build across standard governance practices to say, you can't do this without that, you can't do this without that. But yeah, the real thing is, build the structure that serves your business needs. Yeah. Any other question?
No, that's all now.
Okay. So let's move on. And then I want to talk about processes, right? Processes. That is the next phase in your design. Once you've come up with, you decided on strategy, you know what structure. And remember, part of the structure also needs you to think of what are the reporting relationships, who reports to who, and why, and what roles do these teams perform in delivering the business strategy? What's the role? And it's not just the, oh yeah, this is what they do. No, 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 no. What is their role in delivering the business strategy? So even if you're designing according to geography, for example, the reason you use geography is not just because of, say, I have, Nairobi, and then the Africa, sub-Saharan African axis of wealth as well is Johannesburg, Lagos, and Nairobi, because you want to make sure you're, yes, and I said sub-Saharan Africa, so forgive me to anybody from North Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg, and that axis of work in that way says you chose those three cities for specific reasons. Okay, so that's what, and their role, the organizational role they play, is either in terms of profitability or strategic importance due to the regional location. So you want to cover all East African clients, you're based in Nairobi. You want to cover all the West African clients, including sort of half of Cameroon and all that, you're based in Lagos. And then all of Southern Africa, you want to be based in Johannesburg. So that's also part of the thing you're thinking about in the role the organization plays, and that's why you chose that type of structure. Okay, and then sometimes, and then similar brands or products are gathered together within the same geography, so you blend that together. When you build reporting relationships, make sure you focus on. Excuse me. When you build relationships, make sure it is focused on achieving the right power balance, because and what do I mean by that? You make sure that all the same category, build the same category of levels, have the next level of reporting. Then you build a hierarchy of management within the organization to ensure that the right responsibility and accountability is given to the execution point. Because sometimes we tend to say, okay, well, all the regions should own their thing, but then all the P&L is managed from the center. Because that's also the tension you sometimes have, centralization versus decentralization. Okay, I'll stop there. Let me talk briefly about processes. Right. Within the process structure of or when you're thinking about organizational design, processes, you have to consider what are the common processes that you have in the organization and how will they play out? How will they play out laterally? You need to think about processes that will happen across the entire organization. That's why you call them lateral process. Say for example, performance management. That's a lateral process. How will performance management work in this company? I'll give you an HR example. Another one will be sales and operations planning, which is what, and it's two parts to that. So operation planning happens with production, the sales planning happens with the salespeople. So there must be a consistent sales planning process across the organization. And when it fits, you go back up to the strategy. If you're focused on consumer moments, how is your sales planning slow or fast to ensure it takes advantage of known consumer cycles? The choice of organization you've built, is it a service delivery model? Have you built a customer service organization? And then what processes are you implementing linked to the structure, linked to the strategy? So always connect the dots. Nothing is in isolation. We started from strategy, we went to structure, now we're in processes, but we're linking it all back again. Always links it all back. Then the next thing you think about when you build these processes, you have to set up measures inside them, and then detail what are the activities and the sub-processes. You as the HR manager, you as the OD manager, in implementing this, always link it back and ask the questions to them. So when we're thinking about financial processes, so let's think about budgeting. Yeah, that's, oh my goodness, that's a favorite one. Annual company plan. It's a company process. And in executing the annual company plan, how are we building that process to ensure that it achieves the goal to be the best operational excellent team? How are we building that? So you must, and be sure that, are we able to get information from all the divisions with the way we've set it up? Is it something that everybody's forgetting how to send information in time? Is the calendar clear? And is the process of transferring information from A to B to C very clear across the line? Okay, and then you have the next piece you then have as you design processes are, what are the teams? Who are the teams that execute these processes? How are they connected? What networks do you have to connect them? How are they connected? What kind of things do you need to build in from A to B to C, and then build that to make sure that all the processes that you're working on, they achieve the intention of delivering on your business strategy. Okay. The next thing, I talked briefly about the matrix structure because the processes are so critical when you're managing in the matrix. If the matrix is not clear, and the matrix from the movie sounds something like I'm saying a lot, but it happens in real life and on the job as well. If the matrix structure is not clear and does not deliver on the true, you don't have the clarity of what process helps you achieve what, you will constantly be spinning in a loop where the employees are not clear, there's no information flow through, and then you've created a bottleneck, which is the gridlock that you don't want to happen. Remember the misalignment? Yeah. So the networks that you build are sometimes naturally formed, or sometimes some of them are just like, organically formed as well. Because what is the network? It's the way people interact within one another and what kind of tools that you've placed inside there. Okay. And then you want to make sure that I told you about processes. There has to be that lateral, horizontal flow of information and makes you ensure that everything is done consistently to achieve the organizational goals. Okay. With the teams that you set up, there are different perspectives to the teams. Make sure those teams are utilizing common habits, common processes that ensures that work and the flow of work is done consistently. And so, some roles that are called integrative roles. These roles are sort of your think of your chief operating officer. Chief operating officer is a highly integrative role. Why? Because organizations design that role for two reasons. They want to make sure they've built operational focus for an individual who is able to guarantee operational excellence. So a chief operating officer will have typically all the roles that are considered to be business operations into that job. And it consists of everything from, say, IT, finance, HR, supply chain, procurement, all these types of roles sometimes tend to focus on reporting to the chief operating officer. I remember going for an interview and uh, the manager I met said the HR role reports to the chief operations officer. And they said I wasn't taking that role because, of course, HR, we always say what is sit at the table. And it's true. You're better off having your job as the HR, head of HR, report to the CEO than into the COO. Because then the CEO would think of your job as another operational task that he needs to execute on. And that, if one of your goals as a strategy in the organization is to be people-centric, employee-centric, and you have your HR manager reporting to the COO, you will only treat HR as another expense. HR is going to be treated as another expense. So the integrative roles that you have ensure the right types of jobs are reporting into it. So, and because it then gives it the right focus. The COO role is a great example that like I was saying. And the job is to organize all forms of business operations under one person. And the advantage of that, it creates that focus, it creates that responsibility. And some other times that you have now, and one integrative role that we're building now because of the trend and change in technology is a head of digital marketing. And who's that person? The head of digital marketing is a role that is looking to combine the best of marketing and the best of IT and be forward thinking in delivering on our business responsibilities. Okay. So as you're delivering, again, you have a head of digital marketing. Once you've created or your mind has said, COVID has happened, my technology transformation has accelerated, I need to think of a different organization or rebuild my organization or redesign my organization to achieve my new objective of maximizing my channels, my e-channels, because I want to improve customer experience through technology. That's my goal. Improve customer experience through technology. And I want to maximize all my e-channels. Because of that, I need to build a structure that now has e-channels or different forms of e-formats under my organization. I never had that before. And so I'm now building a new role. What kind of role do I need? So what processes do I need to have? So my value chain on the digital information has to be clear. And then I build a role called the head of digital marketing into my structure. And that person is the integrative role that gathers information from the marketing side, from the technology side to deliver on what I want to achieve. Okay. And then, so next sort of piece around the organizational design is rewarding rewarding the organization. And this typically focuses on what you all know of, based on what we build as a organizational rewards and metrics. So what kind of goals, what scorecards and metrics have you set? And as you build the organization, as you design the new company, the new organization, you have to be sure that you're building in the right metrics and the right performance incentive, the right values, and the right compensation. So, for example, you built in a new team and you need to put in you're using a new team and you need to pay for performance. And part of your strategy is now to say, I want to be the top payer in the market, or I want to deliver the best premium product. When your employees are doing that, are you rewarding the right behaviors? When we did, there have been several organizational changes that we went through. One of the first ones, when I told you about the one we did, customer change and consumer change, when we implemented what we consider to be our target operating model. And why did we even do that? We changed our target operating model because we did a huge organizational transformation that implemented SAP. We wanted to implement one SAP globally. And why? Because in delivering the consumer moments that I talked about, we recognized that the operational efficiency had to happen. And that meant reducing this much in cost, or X percentage in cost, to deliver operational excellence that would achieve great consumer moments. And our tool to delivering that was technology transformation. And so to see all that, we started from strategy, we decided what our criteria would be, and we built new structures for that. So when we got to the point where we had to, so we now built new teams. Because of that, we had now built what we consider to be shared services hubs, because we identified that those hubs would take on all the non, quote unquote, value add services or transactional services that the organization didn't want to do and we didn't want to touch. We wanted to build it at different locations. And we identified 3 different locations that we're going to build these shared services hubs in. What now happened, because I'm talking about goals and rewards, we had now built a new kind of organization, a shared services organization that never existed with the company before. And they were based in countries or locations of low cost. We had 3, Malaysia, we had Romania, and then we had Costa Rica. These 3 countries were considered to be locations of low cost, and they also were geographically placed to service people within a particular time zone. But because we had never built that type of organization before, and the goal was to pay them the least cost, because remember, we took out, in order to build those shared services hubs, all those types of roles, and this is important, all those types of jobs that existed in every country had to be removed from the countries. Because remember, we said we're building a new operating model, focus on operational excellence and delivering the best consumer moments. So we needed to build service to deliver that one, then the operational excellence was happening. So how do we pay them? What are we going to do? How do we even set up, what type of performance objectives should they have? Shared services people. And what kind of career path okay, I'll come to that in my next point. But the question we had to first ask ourselves was, when you hire people that you expect to pay them very little, how should you reward them? What kinds of, how much were you going to pay them to make it motivating for them to join? Because the focus was always keep the cost low, keep the cost low. But in designing that, and the rest of the businesses, all the other parts of the company were paid relatively higher salaries. But these guys that would be in these shared services locations, because already we chose countries that were considered low cost countries, we needed to then redesign and implement a new reward model for that group, specific to that group. Still relatively similar to the rest of the organization, which it had to be, but fundamentally, we had to build a new reward model for them. And then it was a different culture. They were obviously not going to be profit centers. They were going to be cost centers. How were they going to be funded? That was another question that we had to ask ourselves. And in building that, we made sure that we're able to charge every country for money for the services they delivered, because suddenly these guys were now seen as a kind of a profit center for themselves, because they needed to deliver excellence in service delivery to be able to meet the business needs of the different countries that they supported. And so, and because of the kind of reward system we built, it meant you rewarded certain metrics. It rewarded certain behaviors. I'm sorry, certain behaviors that we wanted to see. We said, okay, for attracting them, this is where we wanted to pay them. To retain them, this is how much we want to pay them. To motivate them, here are the types of non-pay based reward that we're going to offer to them. It was career development, coaching, team development, train all their leaders in all the things that we're used to. And so as you design your organization, you get to that point where now that you've built, remember, why did you start it? You started it because you wanted to start a new division. Okay, you wanted a new product. You've identified the type of org structure you needed. You know what kind of processes you're going to build into the company to deliver on this new structure. How are you going to reward them? What are you going to pay them? And is it going to be consistent with the rest? And then remember what we talked about. One example I said, front office / back office. Okay, if you pay the front office guys more than the back office guys, okay, what does that mean for the back office? How do you keep them motivated and retained? Okay, so what, and then is it clear to everybody? Is it understood? When I used to be in consulting, this was another challenge that we had in consulting. We had enterprise teams, which were the sort of the individuals that would be considered back office, and then we had the consultants. So the enterprise team were your IT, HR, and all that. Then the consultants were all the guys facing outside. The career paths were different. The salary differential, there was also a slightly different salary differential. Why? The value, the description that the organization said or built in its organizational design was the competencies needed or the requirements they had for the enterprise staff, completely different from what they needed for the consulting staff. And so, even now to my final point on OD, how do you staff the organization? I just gave you an example of the difference between consulting staff and enterprise staff. How did we staff the organization? Because we knew that the rewards we're paying were slightly different. The requirements to function in those two were slightly different as well. There were certain things that were accepted within the enterprise teams that were never accepted in attracting for the consulting group. And once you build an organization like this, if I walk back through what we started from, once you build an organization like this, the strategy you set it, the structure you've built, you've identified which structure you built, you've identified your processes, you've also identified the kinds of rewards that you need, the scorecards and measures and the behaviors. How do you staff it? You start from the top. You start from the top. Implementing a new organizational design always starts from the top, because part of what you want is to have the role of the manager or the leader of the new team be involved in choosing the rest of their teams. Interesting question, Jide. Was there a question? Okay, no. So one thing that I was going to explain, one thing on staffing. I moved to England in 2013. 2 months after I moved to England, the global team announced a new restructuring, deciding that the central head office had too many top-heavy roles, and they were going to cut that down by 15%. And the job I was moved, the job I was hired to go and do in England was one of the roles that was identified for elimination 2 months after I arrived. No joke, I'm not even kidding. And it was an interesting conversation. I had to go back home to explain to my wife that, yeah, well, the job I told you that we're coming to England for and we're already here is no longer existing. But don't worry, I think they have a plan. I didn't even know what the plan was at the time, but they said that there was a plan. The point was, they gave us this news and they went about reorganizing executing this reorganization work. When it came to staffing the organization, one of the things that was important and was mandatory that they had to do, and which is always best practice, is to be transparent. Why? Why should you be transparent? First, you want to make sure there's some fairness in the process. What companies tend to do is the conclave approach, where some companies tend to do this, at least I know, and we do it too. We did it back then and we're still doing it now. We slot certain people. We just identify, yeah, that person is best for this job. That person is best for this job. No. It works in certain cases where it's clear cut. that because you redesign this new organization and this is the person that takes on the job. But when there's a massive reorganization that's affecting the whole company, you want to give it clarity. You want to give clarity on the process of how you're staffing the new organization. Like I said, start from the top. Identify the first level of people that are going to lead the new organization, and your process for that should involve things like a talent review process, outcomes of a recent talent review, or actually opening it up for individuals to apply, get interviewed, and be successful into the role. Of course, it has the drawbacks. Both options have their drawbacks. When you select, yeah, you may be lucky, you select the right person or not. When you interview, the best person on the day could have gotten the job and your best person didn't get it. You have to work with that. But the point is, keep your process fair. The other reason you need to keep your staffing process fair is the labor laws of the country. In England, we had to have a very clear documented process that we didn't discriminate and we were fair. We seemed to be fair. We needed to give opportunity to everybody. Individuals who came, like myself, from Nigeria to England were considered second-class citizens because we're not citizens of the country. The first people the labor law supported were local employees of the country that had British citizenship. They had first priority. And this was the labor law because if they let them go, they were going to have to pay huge sums, and they were the first priority. So the second priority were people like myself, and then only after they completed the staffing of the local staff did they consider us. All this was made clear to us, and that's part of what is known as the information and consultation, because you need to inform. And if you have a union, this is also going to be part of it. You can't execute a new reorganization structure that sacks half of the workforce or just changes everything and you don't inform the union. The union must be brought into it. If you have elements of a collective bargaining approach that already caters for this, have them involved early on. And then, of course, they must sign on the closure agreement, or they recognize that, look, they must then fight for their staff, in quotes. You know what union guys do. They want to fight for their own staff and they want to fight for their people. But importantly, as you put people into it, best practice tells you to post all jobs if everybody at the same organizational level is affected. And if it's a completely brand new organization, starts by looking internally, who are the people who might be interested, and or go outside. If you don't have the people internally, go outside and find them into the company. Then have the leader of the new team be involved in the selection of their own teams. Have them be involved as they go through the process of identifying the next. Because you choose the first level, maybe the director. Director chooses the senior managers. The senior managers are involved in choosing their own different teams, and so on and so forth, down to the last role. And then once you're done with that, what new performance measures are you going to set for the team? What are the objectives of what are the performance objectives you're going to set for the team? And then how do you now develop capabilities within the team? What learning actions are you going to be offering? And how does this new organization, how will it function? And how will you create content for them to learn how to operate in this new way? Because remember, when you started out with your strategy, it was because you were going to a new area, or you were looking to bounce back from, the team was looking to bounce back from failing at a particular goal or not delivering on a particular objective. Once you get back to staffing the team, you must set new measures that ensures that it fixes the problem of before, or set new realities for where you want to get to. And how will they learn? What are they going to be learning? What are they going to learn to get into that next reality? Okay. Again, pause moment for questions.
Okay, there's a question here from Sean Oyebade.
Okay.
How does a change in business objectives and organization structures impact HR agenda?
Yeah, that's what we've been talking about, because the first thing is the change in business objectives. Say what could be a change in business objective? An example is a change in product line, or a change in service line, change in customer type, a change in business focus, because the location we're in or the service we're in is no longer existing. We just use the COVID example, where people had to stop going into luxury goods, and then they switched to becoming sanitary product manufacturers. your role as the HR person is to understand that the minute this happened, okay, what's going to happen to the existing team? How do I repurpose that? The structure we had before was to meet these types of customers, luxury good produce, right? We're selling high-end luxury goods. Now we're making sanitizers. The people that needed high-end luxury goods, they also need sanitizers, but a lot more people now need sanitizers. So as the HR person, you're even asking that the managers that we have, are they the right ones to deliver that? And then as you walk through this journey, do we have the right relationships? Do we have the right structure to deliver on that? Okay, no worries, no worries. It's okay to recap. Just recapping that, then you think about your structure, what processes do you have, and then how are you going to reward them. So the first thing you think of every time, and this is a fundamental question for all HR people, that your job as an HR manager, as an HR manager, you're not doing HR for the sake of HR. You're doing HR for the sake of the business. And so your job is to constantly understand and know where the business is going to next, and start to think about, okay, so what are the implications? Every time I was in a marketing meeting, because I was always on the marketing leadership team, I sat in the discussions every meeting. And immediately they started talking about things like, oh, well, we didn't hit our sales target last month. Oh, yeah, you know what? This new country, this competition is eating our market share in this location. It starts to trigger things in my mind that, okay, what's the challenge? How are we solving that? And you're challenging them on business realities, but at the same time, offering solutions for them from a people point of view, that you will be bringing solutions or an idea to them on people's solutions. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Fundamentally, every business change will very, very likely have a people impact. Every strategic business change will always have a people impact, either in the type of people you find or the people you develop. Okay. I was talking about the staffing, and from a staffing point of view, like I said, you need to communicate, fill your senior positions first, communicate widely, because think about it, anxiety will already be in the company. The minute you announce a reorg, and there was one, there was one, what was I going to say? Yeah, there was one announcement earlier in the year that talked about the head of, I think, the new Access Diamond Bank merger in Nigeria. When he announced at the start of COVID, something about, he was going to let go this many employees and all that and all that. And everybody was like, hey, how can you do that? You shouldn't have done that. But that's the thing. Organizations will continue to think about new ways to be effective. And one of the things that he did, which obviously I hear that wasn't properly done, was to identify the non-core areas of his business that he could excise and then let those people go, and then focus on the rest of the business and try to think of, in this new world, we're delivering more with less, and we need to continue to do that. That's going to be the phrase that as an HR manager, you always hear. And if they're not asking you, you need to be thinking about it. For the last 7 years, all my time was spent on how can we do more with less. It was always a consistent part of my work every year, and every time we delivered or we set out our new priorities for the year. What I did were three things. First, we looked at this. Do you have the right organization to deliver that? And how do we do that? We went through these steps I'm giving you. They seem long, and I talked, for over an hour and a half about all of them in detail. It can happen very quickly because you just assess the part of your organization that already exists, and you quickly go on to where it doesn't exist and fill that in. You know where the strategy is heading for. You know if you have the right organization to deliver that. Then you know if you have the right people to staff that organization. And we did that every year, and every year we always make choices to let some people go, keep some people, and move some people up every year. Sometimes there was an expansion when there was growth, and then there was a contraction, even when there was growth, to ensure that we kept the competitiveness of the organization. Because you don't want fat. You want to trim down all the fat and make sure you're a lean and agile organization that is ready to respond to business changes at any time. Okay. All right. Let me sort of move on. I'm conscious of time. Let's see, we've talked about this too. Okay. So this is a bit of a summary and a recap of what we do to achieve organizational design model. First, we started off by saying, what's the business climate that you're operating in? The market or is industries changing? Are you buying new businesses? I give you the example of the two banks that merged. The minute those two banks merged, they obviously had to relook at the whole organizational design and ask themselves that, do they have the right strategy? Do they have the right structures? Do they have the right processes? Because you can't have two different and the beauty of merging two different businesses is you take a look at the processes they had for certain actions and you go, oh, that's better than the one we do. We're going to adopt yours. So think about budget planning processes. Once you buy a new company and you see that the way they do maybe talent management or even financial planning is much better than the existing organization, you then have to adopt that common process for both organizations. Okay, that's the beauty of it. Then again, reward platforms. We bought the second largest tobacco company in the US last about 3 or 4 years ago. It was so rich, so rich. They were making money like in so many different places. They became the largest contributor to the global profit. They were contributing 40% of the global profit. 40%. And just to put it in perspective, the Canadian business was 10%, and we were also like delivering 10% of the US profit pool. The Canadian business was delivering, when I left, maybe around 400 million pounds in profit to the group, to the global BAT group. And the US business was delivering 4 billion pounds in profits, times 10. That's how big it was. And when we merged the two organizations, the salary scales for the team in the US was 3 times the rest of any other BAT entity. In fact, the CEO of the US business was the first to get fired because she was earning twice, 2.5 times more than the CEO of the BAT entity in England. And it was not tenable. There was no way we are going to keep her. So one of the first things that we had to sort of resolve once we did that business acquisition was the harmonization of the salaries. Of course, none of them were happy about it. And then the journey to do everything I've been talking about has been happening over the last 3 years, and is estimated to continue for the next 7 years. Because this is a company that was in existence again almost as long as the one we have had, almost 100 years or more. Very, very successful, fully American owned. And now these British guys have just come in and then, because they have a lot of money, acquired them. They're not just going to say, snap, everything is going to operate as normal. The integration process of the two organizations will take time, and it will involve everything we've been talking about. Everything. And that's what we've been doing. There were project teams that did work on every aspect, making sure their own strategy was now aligned to the rest of our strategy. Aligning both was a tough one. And then we went through all the different pieces. There's a specific team that we had to build. We have an organizational effectiveness team that was part of my role as well when I was in England, and I was part of that team. They were focused on setting up different projects to build into this. If you're really considering career alternatives, think of OD. It's very, very exciting. I can tell you that one, because there's never a dull moment. There's always something happening. So just again, doing a super quick recap of when you need to implement change. If you use this model, you definitely, between the STAR model and what I'm showing you, it's between the two of them, you definitely find common grounds that you'll be able to implement based on, right? What's the business rationale for the change? Have a design team. Who will be on your design team? Very good question. Who will be on your design team? You will be on the design team. The business leaders have to be on the design team. The most impacted business leader has to be on the design team. So let's say the change is happening in marketing, or the biggest impact of the change is happening in your factory operations. Don't execute an organizational design change without the buy-in or involvement. I know one person already asked that question about maturity levels. Data always wins the day. Data, those are the facts. The person has to know that if I don't execute this change, this is the losses that it's going to mean for me. And if you still don't get through, yeah, like I said, go higher. Go higher. The challenge we have is even failing to see what you are seeing, which is that North Star, that visionary look that you have. You can see far ahead and they don't. And then there's a struggle for you to connect there. So dial it back, bring it down to the level of whoever you're talking to. If you need to talk to them, I have a friend who's a original HR colleague, and she said she had some of her managers tell her that you talk to us like you're talking to babies or you're talking to children. And she sounded frustrated because she said, yeah, because you're behaving like babies. Because sometimes HR managers, we tend to, maybe talk like we're superior, but when not necessarily because we're superior, but we know what they're not, we see what they're not seeing, and your job is to be able to speak their language, okay, without being condescending or without being uh, sort of arrogant about it. You need to be clear though, that to say, look, here's why I think we need to change. Your design team should include members of the impacted organization, you, okay, and maybe one or two other people within your team. Build some kind of coalition around this, because there are certain things you need to establish, corporate governance, confidentiality, and things like this. Because when you're even thinking about building a new organization, part of what you want to do is, okay, do some testing, do some assessment, if we go in this direction, will people get it or not? And then you need to cook it almost like in the back end. But as you start to build it and make it comfort, everybody can be involved in the design team. There's certain aspects of the organizational design that you involve a lot more people, but the very beginning of it and the very sort of real detailed work is only done by a small amount of people. A small amount of people, not more than, depending on the size of the organization, not more than 2 or 3 people. If it's a bigger organization, then you maybe have one or a few more people on it. As the work begins to unfold, as it begins to take shape, then you need to inform more people, because part of what will need to happen is change management, because then of course OD then has to look into change management. That's why one of the core competencies of an organizational design manager is effective change management. Right. All right. So again, I'm just doing a recap with this slide, so I'm not going to take too much time on it because I want you to have ask questions. We talked about why are we doing this? You set the stage with that. Start to look at your data. What are you going to do? How are you going to assess the current structure? Is it going to meet the objectives of the strategy that you set? Is it going to meet the objectives? Okay, well, what are the processes that are existing today that will meet that objective? What needs to change? So then you come up with a gap, right? You come up with a gap, desired and existing. There's a gap. How do we map? How do we map that gap? How do we deliver on that gap? Are we? And then change readiness is back to my colleague's question earlier, that are they ready for this? Are they ready for this? Nobody was ready for COVID, but we all lived through the change. So, and what I said to some on a different forum I was talking about yesterday was all the technology transformation that we were trying to sell in January, all the ones that were telling people that, oh yeah, let's do this, they've now become obsolete. So they were saying they were not ready for the change, but external forces forced them to be ready, and therefore now they all listen to you and they all agree that the change must happen. So that's a different thing, because external circumstances has forced the change on them. They had to implement the change. They had to give budget for laptops. They had to give budget for technology solutions. They had to give budget for people to get Wi-Fi, proper internet access at home. When you were asking for things like that, they said no before. So change readiness is something you need to assess as well. And then finally, when you execute the transformation, what are some goals you have? What's your new organization looking like? What are the critical skill requirements you have? What are the priorities? And then finally, like we talked about the selection process, implement it, train people, and evaluate how the organization is performing before and then after. What did you do before and how effective were you? What did you use to measure the effectiveness? Yeah, we talked about the example of a failed business. Yeah, it was it was a big failure. And measure effectiveness in terms of the business priorities: profit, revenue, share. These are like top three that you typically talk about: profit, revenue, share. And then from a people point of view, employee engagement. You always want to do that. And then even other measures you can think about is customer satisfaction, enrollment rate, subscription rate, or download rate. All the different measures that you have within your organization. Reduction, waste reduction, effective reduction of waste. How much waste were you accounting for before, and how much waste are you accounting for now? And you want to see a real change within those kind of metrics. Okay, those are the kind of metrics you think about when you're evaluating post and pre. And of course, on the line of this, the things that you need to that you have as your strongest DNA is the the communication, the motivation, and the culture. Okay, I had this one's an example of another type of matrix. This is a geographical matrix similar to the one I told you about. The country has different functions, but then they have all the countries report to one CEO, but all these functions as well report straight through to another sort of functional leader on a different line. So all these country HR directors will have a regional HR director that they all report to. Okay. Yeah, challenges. Some challenges of OD. Wow. Well, the first one is you need to balance. When you ask my CEO back then, what keeps me awake at night, said I need to balance differentiation and integration. Because I need to create uniqueness, but I also need to create a common understanding. And then the balance between standardization and module adjustment is also critical because, yeah, you want standardization to execute effectively, but you also want people to think and recognize that, yeah, well, this standard is not working anymore. Where do I adjust? So you give them that frame. And then the last one is so funny because this happens all the time with different CEOs. Balancing centralization and decentralization. What does that look like? Centralization concentrates power all at the center, where everything is done from the head office. You can't pay salaries head office. You can't sign budgets head office. You can't do this head office. Or a fully decentralized approach where all the locations pretty much decide what they own. You make your money, you spend it, just deliver this much profit to the head office. And there's arguments for both, pros and cons for both. And again, always links back to the stage your organization is at. We've toyed with both. We did both. Several years ago, we had fully, centralized. Then we recognized that people were, and you change according to the responses you're getting. We saw that people took too many advantages. And one of the examples was even when I was doing the L&D structure. There were like 20 or 30 different types of presentation skills training in the company at the time. And we said, no, come on, this doesn't make sense. We need to centralize all that. We then grouped that all back to the global team. And then we created what we called, glocal. Glocal means global and local. So it was globally aligned, but locally relevant. So you had a global alignment, then local relevance. So everybody could recognize their own part of the structure, but then pick what was necessary to them in their local context. This centralization, decentralization debate is never going to stop because every time you need to keep assessing the tension in the system. If you have the right leaders at the different decentralized hubs, you can let them go in making decisions, but you always recognize that they must make those decisions consistent with what the central team expects. And if you get, way too careless and you see it in the kind of results you're getting and the wastage and things like that's why you need to have measures, all your metrics that you're measuring, then you say no. And then even if you see the opportunity that we're generating way too much waste by having too many of the same types of teams, we need to pull that all back into the central team. Then you need to centralize all over again. Okay. Again, conscious of time and conscious of questions. Some of the challenges is as soon as you build, you need to think about make sure employees are connected. What are the global structural issues? Making sure that you build learning organization, flexible work arrangements. Not before COVID, flexible work arrangement meant working from home. Now, flexible work arrangements still mean with COVID is no longer a debate. But now you design flexible work context and flexible work structures for the organization, right? That make sure that even as you're thinking about the rules that exist, how are you building some flexibility for individuals to either have multiple types or multiple careers within the same organization? Okay. Recap, final recap. And I know this because I pushed it to the wire. What's the mission, purpose, and goals? What's the process? What's the best workflow? The rules? What kind of reporting relationships do you need to determine? And then what kind of people systems are you building to drive behavior? Okay. I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Wonderful presentation as always. Got a lot of value. There are questions here, but first let's get some feedback from the audience. How was the session? Let's feel your pulse. Kindly share some of the things you learned. Okay, Omotola says very insightful. Omolola says very insightful. Peter Labi says thank you, sir.
Well, yeah, I just saw his comment. I just saw Peter's comment. Peter is right. Peter says from the look of organizational design framework, it seems that OD encompasses all. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely touches everybody. OD touches everybody. That's why it's such a critical sort of HR competence. It touches on everybody. You need to think about it with everyone. Yeah, true. Thank you, Peter.
Great. Okay, keep them coming. While we take the questions now, please send in your questions using the Q&A feature. If you are joining us via YouTube, please send your question to the chat box and we'll take them from here. Omotola is asking, my understanding of rewards function was being under talent management as a retention and engagement tool, but I see it here as a separate aspect of the OD process from people practices. Could you just help to clarify that?
Sorry, can you take that question again? I just saw one of my personal persons in the chat, Michael Togbe. Yeah, but please go on, repeat that question. I will pay attention now. I didn't understand the question.
Okay, so my understanding of the rewards function was being under talent management as a retention and engagement tool.
Okay.
But I see it here as a separate aspect of the OD process from people practices.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And I think that the question is a great one, or the reflection is a really good one, because we see total rewards serve several purposes, right? It attracts, right? It retains, but crucially, it motivates behavior, the kind of results we want for the organization. And that's where it plays a role in influencing organizational design. Okay, because in attraction phase, yeah, it helps you when you're doing talent acquisition, and of course, you need to pay according to what where the organizational journey is on. Where's your strategy at? Then at the point where you need to retain the employees, you need to make sure that the reward systems that you're building, yeah, you're right, it fits, is aligned to your talent management strategy. But when it comes to behavior and motivation of behavior, your total reward system, and I'm not saying pay, guys, I'm not saying pay, total rewards is a crucial part of organizational design. Yeah, not pay, but rewards. And that one, then, there's a different, I'll let people like Bumi answer questions on reward, but the focus is that the reward part just speaks to, are you talking about extrinsic rewards, which is your base pay and bonuses, or intrinsic rewards? And that's where OD plays in, okay? OD plays in intrinsic rewards. Yeah. Intrinsic rewards focus on things that come from within. Do I enjoy the job? Is the job autonomous? Okay. And do I enjoy the task I'm doing? Do I have freedom to act? Okay. What are my responsibilities? Do I use a variety of my skills in doing the job? And those are the things that that make sense. Yeah.
Okay, great. Next question here from Sean. My organization is currently going through restructuring enterprise-wide. In the Nigerian business unit, communication from top management has not been transparent, despite local HR's efforts in ensuring employees are carried along, but this has been challenging. How else can you influence management transparency?
Yeah, meet them at the point of their need as well. Management transparency is a serious dilemma, and we face it every time. I face it in my job. How can you influence them? Because remember, balancing confidentiality is also a function of proprietary information intellectual property, and also the risk that once that gets out, you may lose competitive advantage. But so what needs to happen in introducing the message to teams is the bite-size approach. What is the smallest chunk that needs to be shared with the most critical people to get them to take action? If you follow that approach, and because if you try to get them to sell everything or share everything, it may be difficult, and they will always say no. But think of it in the bite-size approach, that look, what's the smallest individual information that I can share with the group of people that need to execute the action that will involve them. Again, I go back to data. If you don't, here's what the data says. We'll lose people because with the lack of clarity comes, they fill the gaps with information. And this is what happened. We're losing this. Our turnover has been increasing because of this misalignment or lack of clarity in this team. And the turnover has increased by X%. Because turnover has increased by X%, we're losing business by this much percentage. Data. HR people, think data. Make sure you know your business data. That way, you can influence change. And if they don't take action based on that data, then there's nothing else to make them take action. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, waiting for more questions. Let me check on YouTube. Okay, no questions yet. Please send in your questions while we'll go through more feedback here.
Thank you all. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Kamal on LinkedIn. I am. Yeah. Simple.
Yeah. Aminat says, wonderful. I didn't expect anything less. This is a masterclass. Adendoye says, thank you for a great session.
No,
Omolola says, thank you, Kamal. The STAR framework simplifies the OD process. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. And thank you, Jay. Thank you for your platform. Thank you for curating and creating, great learning experiences for HR professionals across the world, really, for this last month. And I'm sure that your organization will continue to grow and thrive as you want us all to thrive. Because remember, we all thrive, not from just listening to people like me talk, but from people like us coming to share experiences. We also become better HR people. Yeah.
Thank you.
The name of the book, it's called Designing Dynamic Organizations. Jide, I'll send it to you so you can share. Let me see.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put it as part of the slides when I send out the slides. When I send you the slides.
All right, great. Amotola is asking, would you be able to elaborate more practically ways you were able to balance cultural differences between two leaders you were reporting to in your matrix?
Question. Please, you need to pay $1 million for that question. Because I nearly lost my job. But so to be honest, and you're right, the cultural difference was a significant management challenge for me. It was a tough one because I'm a Nigerian guy who was used to, listening to my bosses, and I agree with them and I go what I do. I question them, but with some sort of deference, because I kind of come from that kind of mindset. I used some deference. My manager used to call me Kamal that likes to gently challenge me, because that's my own style, my preference. So I always, one thing I did was, every time they were bouncing me back and forth, and you know what's interesting? They were in the same meetings. They discussed at the same meetings, and they heard the same directives from the global HR director, and then he came out with different interpretations. And then I was the one that was going to execute their different interpretations. I had to, so then I'd go and see, when Boeing and Anna, the German was Boeing, the Russian was Anna, when they're in the same GHRLT meeting, why are they asking me to do something that's completely at odds with each other? So when I needed to clarify, like I said, okay, there were times when we'd go for a talent meeting. My boss, the German guy, would say certain things. I'd come back, and my boss Anna would be saying different things. Then I'd organize a meeting for 3 of us to be in the room. Okay. And then I'd come in with my own clarity of, here's what we need to agree, guys. And they're best of friends, by the way. They always succeed at each other. So me, I knew they were talking about me. If I was inconsistent in my approach to both of them, they would know, and then they would quickly find me out. So I made sure that my message was always consistent to both parties. And even my behavior, the kind of results I demonstrated, was always consistent. So if I was going to meet needs of this person or commit to a deadline for this one, I committed to that same deadline with the other person. Because they always talk. When I'm not there, they're going to talk about me anyway. They're always in the same meetings and they're best of buddies, drinking buddies and everything. So my goal, always be consistent in managing the relationship. Don't appear to take favorites, although I like the German more. So, but in my political management, I always made sure that I didn't take favorites. And even if I took one into confidence, because I did, when I was leaving, when I wanted to resign, I took the German guy into confidence, and he helped me get this job that I came to Canada for. But immediately I got his buy-in, and I said, please don't tell the Russian yet. I'm going to tell her myself. And he said, okay, when you're ready, let me know. And I immediately went to go and tell her, and then they were both aware. Okay, so always balance the two styles, and it happens with you as well. Your finance manager and the marketing guy, or with your CEO and the COO. This happens even for you in the office. Just consistency and clarity is always going to help you out. Yeah.
Fantastic. Another question here from Juliet, quite encompassing. Yes, OD impacts all sections of the business. What do you advise when the change is being talked about, but the readiness is not seen in the leadership? What practical steps should one start with?
Yeah, well, I think the do nothing scenario. You need to come up with the do nothing scenario. What happens when we do nothing? What are the consequences of doing nothing? And it happens in our lives on a daily basis. What are the consequences of doing nothing? What opportunities do you miss out by doing nothing? What's the size of commercial loss? What's the value of business loss when you do nothing? And you see that readiness moves along the curve once reality is reflected. It moves along the curve of, okay, I wasn't ready because I didn't know enough. I know more now. Oh my goodness, I need to take action. And some of the challenges with readiness also is influenced by the culture of your organization, right? The culture of it. If you have a culture where everybody kind of takes their time and we'll do it when we do it, you always struggle with readiness. And for that, you then need to create the sense of urgency. John Cotter talks about in implementing change, the sense of urgency is the first thing that you think about when you come up with your guiding coalition. You need to have the sense of urgency and get the way practically to get that sense of urgency or even influencing readiness. Sure, get a buy-in, get someone who you have to have your allies. This is who we need. What we need to do as HR people, identify who's going to be your ally on the CEO team, on the board, and get that person on your side with showing them the consequences of doing nothing. Show the consequences of doing nothing and be clear. Again, go back to my favorite topic. What business data are you leveraging to show the consequences of doing nothing? Everybody's doing business to make money. How will this affect the bottom line? What was the impact of doing nothing on the bottom line?
All right, great. Any more questions? Excuse me. Before we let Kamal go and be with his family this Sunday morning.
No, it's been fun. It's been great just, talking about some of my favorite topics. I know OG is not the most popular one, but I think it's also probably one of the most important ones. It's not popular, but it's very, very important. It's very important. Everybody needs to understand organizational design. Everybody in HR. Every business leader, really. You must have it as a competence. You must.
All right. While we're waiting, I have a little announcement before before we wrap up this session. So there's meant to be a session by 3 p.m., but due to some
Thank you.
What's it called? Some circumstances beyond our control. During the week, the speaker couldn't commit to this session because he had other commitments that superseded this. But that notwithstanding, it's fitting that Kamal closes the conference. But then again, would have to reschedule that, and as a compensation, would have one bonus webinar session. So we have we promise you 2 webinar sessions. And as this conference was going on, because of the impact and the feedback that we've gotten, we would like this to continue, not just end with August. So we would be holding a tHRive webinar series like once every month. So we'll bring we'll be gathering here once every month to have a webinar series on different topics as we just continue to drive this conversation and just give as much information to help every one of us in our careers and the organizations that we serve to thrive. So beyond the end of this conference, we'll be having those monthly webinar series to continue this.
Yeah. Nice, that's a good idea. Nice, really good. And yeah, please find me on LinkedIn. Let's connect. I accept connections requests. I accept. I trust me, I do. And I respond to messages. I definitely respond to messages. So please, if you want us to continue the conversation, always a pleasure for me to connect with HR professionals. I always feel privileged and blessed when people say they want to connect, because I know I'm going to learn from them. So please find me on LinkedIn. Let's connect. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all for the feedback. I can see them here. Might not be able to read them all, but thank you so much. I'm glad you are excited that we'll be having the monthly session. So great. At least that gives us some more courage to go ahead with it. So any more questions for Kamal before I let him go? There are some next steps I want to discuss about the tHRive conference, but that doesn't concern OD. So just any other question before we let him go, then we'll get into that and then share the next steps and what we have in store for you here. Okay, we're just getting feedback. Let me just read some of them. Sean Ibadi says, good idea, Jide, great job. Thank you. Iberi says, wow, what a learning journey. Every good thing must come to an end. Thank you. Well, we are trying to make it not come to an end. So
yeah.
Alabisi says, wow, Adonam Consulting is the real deal. Thank you. Thank you so much. Julia says, thank you so much for all. Very delighted. Abib says, in fact, I learned a load of new things on organizational designs. Thank you. Kamal came through as usual.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. So that's my cue to let you go, Kamal. Any final words for us, HR colleagues?
Yeah, no, I think just my charge to everyone, all of you on the line that joined this call as HR professionals. Thank you for your service. Thank you. We don't say it enough to ourselves. We should tell ourselves a lot more. Thank you. It's a demanding job to wake up to every day, but you do it because you love it and you're passionate about it. And so thank you for all you do as HR professionals. For joining a call like this, it's because you want to advance yourself and grow your knowledge. So well done for your continuous development. We say Kaizen tells you continuous improvement never stops, right? It's continuous and never-ending improvement. So, I urge you to never stop learning. I also urge you to continue to think of different ways to add value to your organization and focus on adding value by understanding how your business operates, okay? And make sure that you're connecting your HR solutions to a proper understanding of the business. There's nothing stopping you from asking the questions about from the finance manager, what's our financial status this month? And understanding that will definitely enable you to better drive the business decisions, because when you know we're not making as much money, you're not going to be saying let's spend X million naira on a particular training, and that means you're not, HR intelligence. And now that we've all gone virtual, think of new ways to continue to build what I call HR intelligence. When you were in the office, people used to stop by your desk, or they used to say, can I have a short chat, or can I have a meeting with you? Find new ways, virtual ones, to create those moments, and so that you continue to build your own HR intelligence. And yeah, wish you guys the very best of September. And I pray that you and your loved ones, we all will be looking at 2021 with joy. We've had enough sadness and news. I pray that you all have great news and awesome news, and stay safe and survive the rest and thrive. Yeah, and thrive for the rest of the year and beyond. All right. Thank you, Jide. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
We appreciate your time. Thank you for all what you've shared from your heart. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
All right.
Regards to the family.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so I just shared a link in the chat session for a page for us to get feedback about this conference. Please, the page is on LinkedIn. Please follow that link. Let's have some of your feedback. It will really be glad to, we'll really be glad to hear from you, what you learned from this conference, your key takeaways, just general feedback and comments on any of the sessions that we've had throughout the month of August. We'll be looking forward to hearing from you. Your thank you will be like $1 million to us. Let's just have some of your feedback on through that link. Please follow the link is in the chat section, both here and on YouTube. So we'll be looking forward to your feedback. So quickly, just going to run through the additional benefits of the tHRive conference, apart from the free access we gave to the live sessions. So many questions have come up on that. So just quickly want to run through that, and also what we do at Adulam Consulting in terms of our exam preparation courses for the HRCI certifications. So the first thing that, first questions you usually get about these sessions, about the slides for the speakers. So for as many speakers that send their slides to us, Kamal sends his, for as many that share their, give us that permission, we'll share with you. And there's been a lot of speakers that done that. So we sent a link previously. We are going to send another mail tomorrow with that link with the updated presentations from all the previous speakers. So please check your mail tomorrow. If you're using a Gmail, most likely our mail might go into the promotions folder. So please look into your promotion folder if you don't see it in your inbox. If you're using Yahoo, it might go to your junk mail. So please check there as well. But you get a mail from us tomorrow. Right, so some of the benefits from this conference is that you can get a certificate of completion for some of, for all these topics that we've mentioned: organizational design, reward strategies, and all that, learning and development. If you hold any of the HRCI certification, you can also get the recertification credits that these sessions have been pre-approved for. And then you can also get access to the recorded replays of all the sessions we've had from August 1 till now. You get a 3-month access to that, as well as you join 1-year subscription into our tHRive exclusive community. So the code is on the attendance code for this session is, I'm currently sharing it on the screen, so you can take note of that and also follow the link that, like I said, I shared in the chat session to get your, to send your feedback to us. So if you want any of those benefits for, so there are 2 categories, basically, those who do not hold any of the HRCI certification and those who do. So those who don't, of course, cannot qualify for the certification credits yet until they get any of those certifications. So for those categories of people with a payment of $15,000, which is like $37, you get access to all the recorded replays. You get certificate for all the sessions that you attended. We'll send a form tomorrow for you to fill the attendance, to record your attendance with the attendance code. You also get a discount for any of our HRCI virtual class, exam preparatory class that will be holding for the rest of the year. There's one in September, there's one in November. If you can join the one in September, the one in, there's a GPHR class in October, you can also join that if you meet the eligibility requirements. So 4 benefits: recorded replays, certificates, the tHRive community, and then discounts on our prep classes. So those 4 benefits are available for a small fee of 15,000 Naira, which is less than $40. Then the second category of people are those who hold any of the HRCI certifications. So APHRI, APHR, PHRI, PHR, SPHRI, SPHR, or GPHR. And you need recertification credits towards renewing your certification. So with this program, no matter the certification you have, you can get all the recertification credits you need at a go. So for example, if you hold the SPHRI, you can get the 45 HR credits and 15 business credits to make a total of 60 credits that you need to recertify your SPHRI. So to get that benefit of, if you hold the GPHR, PHRI, if you need 60 HR credits, this program has been designed in such a way that it will give you all those credits at a go. So to get all those benefits, along with, of course, a certificate of completion as well, 3 months access to the recorded replays, and then access to subscription to the tHRive community, which is basically a community for continuous learning and professional development of HR professionals. So like I said, we don't want this to just end with the conference. We want us to keep learning, to keep growing, and to keep thriving. So that's why that community is coming up. And then we'll be sharing, of course, you get access to those webinar series that I mentioned earlier that I'll be doing every month now. You get access to articles, to information, to things that will just help you more on the job and to be HR superstars, as it were. So we'll be sharing all those resources in that community, and just also a place to network and grow together as an HR community from across the world. So you get access to that as well. So for a fee of 60,000, which is about $150, I think, depending on what currency you're from, because there are people on this call from outside Nigeria. So you can get access to all those benefits. So you get all your recertification credits, you get access to all the replays of all the sessions, and then certificate of completion and the tHRive community. So that now, talking about the preparatory classes. So we run our preparatory classes for all the HRCI certifications. So APHRI, PHRI, SPHRI, and GPHR. So all these certifications, they are not stages, unlike, because a lot of people confuse them as stages. They are not stages, they are just different certifications depending on your level of experience or qualification, educational qualification. So for example, if you are just starting out in HR without any HR experience, the certification that is right for you is the APHRI, which is Associate Professional in Human Resources International. If you have 2 years HR experience or 1 year experience with a master's degree, then you can take the PHRI certification, which is Professional in Human Resource International. If you're a senior professional with 5 years HR experience or 4 years HR experience with a master's degree, you can take the SPHRI. While the GPHR, if you have 3 years HR experience, before now I used to have a requirement of global HR experience, but that has been taken out because now we live in a borderless world and it's a global workforce. So everyone is really a global professional, but is more focused towards global HR responsibilities if you are responsible for the HR function across 2 or more countries. So that certification is tailored more to you. So we have classes for the SPHRI, APHRI, and PHRI in September, and then again in November, while we have a class for the GPHR in October. So depending on which of the certifications you are qualified for and you want to go for, you can either join the classes in September, October, or November. For the SPHRI, the preparatory class is actually starting next weekend. So from September 5, 6 12 and 13 will be taking the prep classes for the SPHRI, while the last 2 weekends of September will be taking the PHRI and the APHRI exam prep classes. Then in October, starting from October 17, we'll take the GPHR classes, and then another set of SPHRI, PHRI, and APHRI people will come in November. So if you want to join the September session, kindly reach out to us, send us a mail. We also send a mail tomorrow with this information, so please check your mail for this information. Okay, there's this question here. Adewumi says, hello, Baba Jide. I'm actually new in HR and I do not hold any certificates yet. Where do I start from? Okay, that's the APHRI, like I mentioned. That's the Associate Professional and Human Resources International. So it gives you foundational knowledge of the core functional areas of HR from a global best practices point of view. So that gives you a launch pad into the HR profession. So with that certification, you can really just start on your HR journey, and you won't feel, you'll just be like a fish in water, and you'll be able to blend in and quickly grow in that profession. So the APHRI is the one you should look to if you do not have any HR experience. But if you have 2 years experience or 1 year with a master's degree, you can take the Professional in Human Resource International. That's the PHRI certification. So any more questions? I think I've gone through all the announcement that I have. Please take note of the attendance code for this session. This session was pre-approved for 3 global credits. So if you have the GPHR certification, you should note this one. And then please follow the link on the screen. I also shared it in the chat session. I'll just share it again. We'd really love to get your feedback about this program, about the virtual conference, and what you learned and your key takeaways, and just share with us. Let's have some feedback. Okay, Juliet is asking, are there prep classes that do not involve Sundays? No. So because we are working professionals, there are no prep classes during the week, so we take a full advantage of all the weekends. So the prep classes spans through Saturdays and Sundays. So but they are not in the morning, so it's like in the afternoon from 12 noon. So it won't interfere with you attending church or anything. Okay, Bolani is asking, and if you want to ask your question like by speaking, you can also raise your hand, so I can unmute you here and enable you to talk. So Bolani is asking, what about arrangements for writing the exams and how much does it cost? There are centers all over Nigeria and across the world for exam centers for you to write your exams. Of course, observing the health and safety protocols of social distancing and sanitized and everything, you go with your face mask. So yes, exams are available all year round across the world. So you can really pick when you want to write the exam. So after you're done with your preparation, you can schedule your preferred dates, and depending on the center that is closest to you. So there are 5 centers across Lagos. There's a center in Abuja and Kaduna, and then there's a center in Asaba and Enugu. There are centers across Africa in Kenya, Cameroon, Ghana, Uganda. There are centers made in most countries across Africa, so wherever you're journeying from, and across the world as well. So for the exam course, okay, our training fee, which will give you access to the virtual classes, study materials, practice tests for each of the modules that we'll cover, mock exam, and then a study group for after class follow-up and support. Basically all the resources and support that you need to prepare and successfully pass the exam. The training fee for the APHRI is 50,000. There's a discount. So for being a participant here, automatically you qualify for a 15% discount on all these fees that I'll mention now. If you paid for the tHRive benefit that I mentioned earlier, like the 15,000 fee that I mentioned earlier, you get a 40% discount instead of a 15% discount on our prep course fee. So the fee for the APHRI is 50,000 naira, the PHRI is 60, SPHRI is 70,000, and GPHR is 80,000. Now for the exam fees are paid in dollars or the equivalent to your local currency. So I'm going to be saying them in dollars. So depending on the exchange rate. For the APHRI, the fee is $275. The PHRI is $330. SPHRI is $440, while GPHRI is $555. We'll send all this information in our mail tomorrow. It can be a lot to take in now, but we'll send it to your mail tomorrow. And please note that all these fees that I mentioned, for the GPHR to the APHR, are all discounted fees. So because we're a global partner with HRCI, we get access to this discount so we can pass it to our clients. So they are all discounted fees. Outside a global partner, you actually be paying more if you want to pay yourself. So these are discounted fees, so you should take advantage of that also. Okay, any more questions? Please take note of the dates. If you want to join the September class, the registration is still open. You can join and make payment during this week to join the SPHRI class or on the PHRI and APHRI class happening later this month. And then the GPHR, which is for global professionals with 3 years HR experience, in October. And then in November, we have another set of classes to close out the year. Then we'll now release a calendar for 2021. Okay, Adedo is asking how to pay the 15,000 naira. Okay, so there's a link in the mail that will be sent to you tomorrow. We also put the account details there. It's actually in the welcome mail that was sent to you. There's a payment link in the welcome mail that you got when you registered for this conference. You can refer to that, but we'll also send it again tomorrow. And we also send it in our communication tomorrow, so you can you get the details there. Right, any more questions? Who wants to speak? You might want to share any feedback. We'd love to hear other voices apart from ours that you've been hearing since the beginning of this conference. So if you want to speak, ask questions, give feedback, you can raise your hand and then we'll enable you to talk. Okay, Adedoyin, you're welcome. So to register for or to get more information about any of our prep classes, I'm going to send a link now to the chat box to just to register your interest. So you can go there now. It's a link to our sites. We have more information there about our courses and everything. So you can go there now to register and then we'll send you more information. Please take note that we've not resumed physical classes yet. So all the classes that I mentioned are all virtual classes. Right, so those fees that I mentioned are for the virtual classes. So please take note of that. We are all still working remotely here. Okay, Julia says, thank you, Babajide. It has been wonderful being at this great learning community. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for joining. Thank you for the time invested in this. Odemiwa title says, when will the certificate be ready for those who have paid for? Okay, so from tomorrow you get communication from us about that. We'll first send you like a form to fill to record your attendance for the sessions that you joined. So we'll send that tomorrow, and then when you record your attendance, you process your certificates and you get your certificates. Right, Olumiwa. Okay, Adedoyin, thank you for a wonderful job. Well done. Thank you very much. Like Omotola suggested it, I would have had a party, but we are all virtual here, so it would have been great to have a sort of a closing ceremony. It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, and an honor to host this conference. And on behalf of the team at Adulam Consulting, we want to say a very big thank you to everyone that joined, whether you joined one session or all the 29 sessions that we've had or 2 sessions, doesn't matter. We thank you for every minute that you spent here on this conference. You've made it a worthwhile investment and endeavor for us. So we thank you so much for joining. No, Motola, it wasn't Samuel. Yes, Molan, it is 1 August to remember. Thank you. It's been a great one, sharing with you. Thank you for all being a part of this. And like I said, it doesn't end here. Let's continue the movement. Let's keep up the momentum. We'll be announcing our monthly webinars. You get it. So far as you registered for this conference, you'll be getting mails for those monthly webinars. So just to keep you abreast for as many people that wants to join as possible. So we keep learning and going on from here and thriving, as the theme of this program says, thriving in our careers and the organizations we serve as well. Okay, Adeomi, thank you for your feedback. Thank you. Adeomi says, thank you, Baba Jide, for your thoughtfulness and a job well done. It's been eye-opening, insightful, and impactful. I realize there is more to HR than meets the eye. Thank you very much. Also, just like to have your feedback on that link that I shared earlier, just to have it all in one place and not just in the chat session here. So please can share some of this feedback with us, follow that link, and then it would be great to hear from you. Right. So if there's no other question, we'll bring this conference to a close. It's been great spending the Saturdays and Sundays in August with you all. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah. Thank you all for joining, and see you again on our webinar on our monthly webinar series. And for those who join the tHRive community as well, we'll continue the conversations there. So thank you so much for the viewers on YouTube. Thank you for joining. Great having you to be part of this. Elizabeth, you want to speak? Okay. Just a minute. Okay. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello?
Yes, you can hear me. Go ahead.
All right. It's been a wonderful time. Honestly, I've learned a lot from this training, and I particularly want to know something. For instance, do you people have a complete training session with practical and everything that goes with it for specific aspect, like let's say performance management? Do you have something like that that we can have in this same forum? It's more or less a question.
Yes.
First of all, I appreciate you and the organization for what they have done for this program, but I really want to know, because I'm very, very much interested if there will be a full session like this just for one specific aspect of HR. It could be performance management alone. It could be payroll administration. I really want to know so that, when we take those ones specifically, everything about that particular aspect of HR will be treated. Do you have programs like that coming up soon?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Thank you so much. Yes, so we do. Usually at the beginning of the year, we release our calendar for the HR trainings that we have over the course of the year. As 2020 is a special year and COVID disrupted everything, we couldn't hold those trainings during this year. But yes, we have specific trainings for specific functions in HR. So part of what this conference also helped us to do is to kind of do a crash course on all those trainings that would have done across the year. So that's what we did here. But for 2021, we are going to release our training calendar again, and you have trainings on different aspects of HR, like full trainings, like you mentioned, on like specific areas. They are usually 2-day trainings, so the whole we'll spend the whole day on those 2 days just looking at all the nitty-gritty of that particular HR function. So yes, we do. So thank you very much for asking that question. So we'll be sharing that when it's available, the 2021 calendar. Thank you very much. Okay, any more questions there? Thank you, Sylvia, for your feedback. Thank you, Felicia. Thank you. Okay, great. I think we can call it a day here. If there's no other question, just checking one last time to see we are all okay. No more questions. Right. Let's call it a day here. Please follow that link that I shared earlier to the LinkedIn page. Let's have your feedback. We'll be sending you mails tomorrow. Please look out in your inbox, promotions folder, junk folder for those mails in case you don't see them in your inbox. And then let's have a great week. Have a great month ahead. It's September to remember, just like August has been great. And let's all just continue to thrive in our careers, our families, our businesses, and all our endeavors. Thank you so much for being a part of this. God bless you all.